Roddy, hello.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me.
Pleasure.
I thought maybe we could start. I don't tend to introduce people because everybody's going to know who you are.
Hello, Mum.
So I thought we could just jump in and you could say a little something about the Bailey Concert Singers Symposium that we're putting on.
Yes.
Because it was your idea.
Yes, it comes out of a COVID initiative called Momentum Now that was pioneered by Barbara Hannigan. She got in contact with me in the early days of COVID, thinking, when things do pick up, what shape's it going to be? How is it going to look?
Mm-hmm.
I think we both realised that probably as things began to, concerts might begin happening again, that it would be kind of the usual suspects, established artists who'd get the first phone calls,
Mm-hmm.
and that there would be a seam of people left behind, the people who were just starting their careers, maybe, or maybe just left college, just thinking, right, now's my time, and suddenly, their diaries have completely cleared.
Mm-hmm.
So Barbara put together this initiative, Momentum Now, kind of instantly, just so that people who were getting the phone calls could bring others with them. From her point of view, it's conducting, singing as well. From my point of view, singing. So when I was eventually asked to do recitals, distanced recitals, I could say, I'd love to, but could I bring another singer or two, or more pianists or whatever, so we could just share the stage. So that was the idea, and this is a very long answer to a short question.
No, that's fine.
Part of that, obviously, these things need funding, obviously, and we were thinking around that. And my dear friend Barbara Bailey, who lives on a farm in South Africa, she heard about this scheme and said, I'd love to contribute to that financially. And so she put some money aside and sent that to us. And that was wonderful. Barbara is an extraordinary woman, and anybody who's done any music, particularly choral music, but any music in particular in South Africa, has probably been to her farm at some point. Okay. She's a great musical magnet for all things choral, musical. She's got lots of friends here in the UK, and she's visiting quite often. She's fairly elderly now, and I think possibly her visiting UK days may be at a premium, but she's still very much involved, wants to be involved. So that's the background of it all, and simply that at the end of all of this, there was still some money left in the bank, and the Momentum Now people said, okay, look, COVID is far enough in the past that people are beginning to get on their feet, and there's still some money in the kitty left over. What would you like to do with it? Well, people are still on their feet, but I'm also aware that there's a kind of still a lost generation of a couple of years worth of people whose time should have happened. They should have launched themselves onto the circuit of freelance or professional singing, generally speaking, and weren't able to. So at the time that they finally say, right, now I'm ready to set out my stall and get going, the next generation are doing exactly the same thing at the same time. There's just suddenly this glut of people who are all trying to. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That is one of the great casualties of this pandemic. So I think I'm fairly aware that a lot of people who are a bit stuck, and I really wanted to find some way of helping them. So one of the things I thought I might do is this symposium, which is looking specifically at concert singing. There are lots of masterclasses and workshops focusing on opera, and quite a lot on song. But there's this whole area of freelance work in this country in particular, but around the world, of concert singing. The Messiahs, the Creations, the Elijahs, and the Mozart masses, and all this sort of stuff. We do particularly well in this country with our amateur choral scene as well as the professional choral scene. And I wanted to scoop people up. Another thing about COVID was was networking, that people were unable to network. One of the ways that you advertise yourself is simply by doing a concert.
Yes. And
someone's in the audience and says, "Oh gosh, you sang very nicely. We're doing something next month or whatever. Can you sing in that?" And that got cut off. So people could only went to the established artists. They went to the names they know to say, could you be an SATB quartet in our next concert? So we wanted to give people a chance to network. We wanted to give them a chance to talk about concert singing and how important it is to the singing scene in this country, and discuss it amongst ourselves, and then our so-called established artists, put in our pennyworth and see if we can help people along.
Great.
Have you got another question? Because that was that was 20
We're
minutes.
done. That's it. 45 minutes. No. So oratorio repertoire, is that something you grew up with and were involved with a lot as a choral scholar, or as, I don't know if you were a chorister?
Yeah, I was a choral scholar, chorister, but I was hardly a chorister before that. It's sort of, I was following my older brother's footsteps, who was a chorister at Oxford, at the Christ Church Cathedral in Oxford. And I went to the same choir school as him, but didn't quite get to the heights of the cathedral choir. No matter, I'm over that now.
Clearly.
As you can see, just a little bit of, but it was, yes, is the answer to that, because as an undergraduate choral scholar, I was kind of doing solos in concerts most weekends, it feels like now. I learnt the bass parts to Haydn masses and Mozart masses. I learnt also to check which Haydn mass they were doing. There's more than one coronation mass, it turns out.
Yeah.
And actually, or those great times when you turn up to do a Bach Passion, you realise you've got the wrong one, and you're singing in English and everyone says in German.
Yes.
All those things. So I learnt that mostly as an undergraduate and in those years afterwards. So that when I went off to be a classroom music teacher for a few years, I would continue to do this, again, sort of semi-professional singing in the scene around London and further afield.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I stopped being a classroom teacher and began to be a professional singer, hey, take the stabilizers off, actually I'd already been doing it. So I just carried on, but more so, as it were.
Okay. I didn't know you had been a classroom teacher.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, 3 glorious years at Tiffin Boys' School in
I
Kingston
see.
Thames, which was wonderful, which meant in some ways that I was a late starter, which as a man is not a...
How late?
Well, I suppose by the time I'd been a teacher, say, into my mid-20s, then I stopped and decided to try professional singing more chorally than as a soloist. But then I went to the Guildhall School of Music at maybe as I was approaching my 30s, in order to retrain on the opera course. This was so that I could go and have regular lessons with David Pollard, with whom I've been having regular lessons ever since. And
he's still your teacher?
He's still my teacher,
right.
Yes. I don't see him nearly as often as I wish I could, but crucially for me, at that point, I saw him once a week, and had all of the teaching that the Guildhall could give me, all the coaching. And I had applied for the opera course not because I had any pretensions to being an opera singer, but because it was a 2-year course, the postgraduate course that I was eligible for, looked like a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I fell into that almost by accident. It meant then that the choral training I have that enables me to operate well in this oratorio world we're talking about, I had those a lot of those basic skills and lots of the experience that I've talked about as an undergraduate. Then combining that with this new thing of opera, I thought, this is in a new world. I was able to observe that sometimes it does feel like different worlds, and that a lot of opera singer friends of mine don't really do concert work, and vice versa. A lot of my concert friends a little bit frightened of the opera thing, and then there's of course recitals. There's a separate arm, and they can feel very separate worlds. I enjoy combining them, not for any special reason, just because all the doors were open, so I just tried all the handles.
And if you have that versatility and you're not afraid of either, if it doesn't feel uncomfortable, why not just do all of it? I mean, it makes you more employable as a singer.
Yeah, I certainly found that, just because I'm talking about COVID, also, it was a big thing, but I found that as COVID struck. A lot of my contemporaries and my colleagues who say do grand opera, which you need a full orchestra, you need a full chorus and a big set, they lost their entire diaries and had no idea when that might come back. Now, I happened to be singing in Madame Butterfly when COVID struck, so obviously that was brought short. But I also do recital work, which is with one other person, I'm facing away from them, and they are roughly speaking 2 meters away. So the lead recital, the song recital, was a perfect way to begin ginger steps back out of COVID. And from that then into sort of chamber concerts where you can have limited chorus, 4 people, 8 people, 16 people spaced out with a chamber orchestra. This, that's the sort of stuff I was doing before anyway. So it that kind of varied what my children describe as portfolio career actually was perfectly suited to this slow return from the pandemic situations, all these lockdowns. Yeah.
Okay. Do you approach oratorio, leader, song, opera differently, or do you have the same mindset and the same process that you go through?
I don't think I approach them differently, not consciously. The easy answer is they're all aspects of a musician's career. The job comes in, you say yes, you learn it, you sing it. I mean, that's it. If I were to break it down, I'm sure there are differences, and there are things that I can learn from each one. Okay. For example, when I enter a contract with an opera house, one of the things they say is you will know the role from memory before we start rehearsals. So that's something that they require of me, and something I hope I can do. So by the time I come to the first rehearsal, it's pretty much in there, and then begins a 5-week rehearsal period, or however long it is, for me to bed that down and really get it into my body. And I realised that I could afford myself such discipline when I'm studying a recital program. Imagine, of course there's nobody else to say it, I have to say it to myself. Okay, I will know this recital program from memory 5 weeks before the recital, and then I could rehearse it every day, 5 weeks. Oops, see, that's a fantasy. It doesn't, life gets in the way of that. But I realise why it is when I come to an opera opening first night, why it is I feel so comfortable. It's because I've worked at it hard. I've worked at it with colleagues, we discussed it. I've got a director, I've got a conductor, I've got music staff, I've got all sorts of people who give me input, language coach. I've got all sorts of people who give me inputs and stuff and ideas, and it all feeds in over a lengthy period, and at the end, when the curtain rises on first night, I'm just flying. So it is that my most scary recitals have been because it's been a bit wing and a prayer. I've got a new program, and there's too many languages, and it was a great idea a year ago when I put the program down, and now I'm standing in front of the audience.
That's a good point. I've done a few recitals, and you have a whole series of pieces that can have almost no connection to each other, except that you've decided that they do suit the theme you're going for. But they can be different centuries, they could be different languages. That makes it much harder to jump. But then recitals, I think most people find harder. You might be an exception to this because you do so many recitals.
There's a lovely thought. No, they're just as hard. They're just as hard. But I do lots. Actually, that is a difference between me and a lot of my colleagues who may be a little intimidated by the whole idea. I may be, again, having been a classroom music teacher, maybe I've lost some of the naked fear of standing in front of people, just me and a pianist, the two of us standing in front of these people and trying to entertain them for an hour and a half, whatever it is, because I had the edges knocked off me in the classroom.
I see.
But apart from that, no, it's all that
still
learning,
scary.
and it's still scary. Yeah.
Okay.
Until you get a chance to do it, maybe more than once, the same program more than once. I've learnt that in the last few years, the idea of being able to repeat a program. In years gone by, when just being offered a recital was kind of a red letter day anyway, I was not so much in control of the repertoire like I am. I'd like to think I am now, but anyway, that's not true either. So someone might say, we'd love you to do a recital as part of a festival, and this year's featured composer is Corngold. You go, oh, great, lovely, okay, I'll dig that out. Okay. And then a week later you get another recital, and they say, well, yes, but we're doing Mendelssohn. And so you've got these two. That's great, lovely. Thank you for the offer of work. But I now have two completely different recital programs within a week. Sometimes within days of each other. Sometimes on consecutive nights. two completely different recital programs. That used to do my head in.
Right.
And of course, I'm not going to say to the Mendelssohn Festival, it has to be Korngold, you know, that doesn't, otherwise I don't get the
Right.
job. So that was a bit awkward.
Okay, but I guess as you're pretty established now, slight understatements, but you can choose the repertoire more.
To a certain extent, being established, being older, being this far down the road means that actually, if a really nice job comes my way, but the circumstances don't quite fit, then I don't have to feel quite so worried about saying no.
Okay.
But actually, I can do myself a favour
Mm-hmm.
by saying, actually, you know what, it's a lovely offer, but I'm not going to do that because the repertoire's not right, or I'm going to be too busy, and I'm going to have to fly in from somewhere, and it's just not going to fit. And actually, I'll do a better job if I shut up for a day than if I just keep hacking away. That's taken me decades to learn, to be honest.
Well, I think the only people who maybe get to that point are the ones who have had a very long run of it going very well for them.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a reason why that would be, because you're very good at what you do, you take it very seriously. I know people who have been around for doing the job for 30, 40 years and still have to take everything. But that's just the name of any industry, is some people make it further than others.
Yes, true. There's some truth. I mean, it's difficult to unpack, but I think for all of us, there are moments when you look at your life, and pandemic was a good one. Moments when you look in your life and think, I'm doing all this, am I happy? Does it make me happy? And if I were to find that I was bouncing around doing all this work, trying to please as many people as possible, and I was exhausted and I wasn't enjoying it anymore, that's a good moment to quote the government, to retrain for cyber. You know, there's a good moment to say, actually, you know what, I'm not enjoying this, I'm going to do something else. And I promised my wife, when I stopped teaching and looked at this as a career, I said, I've got my PGCE somewhere in a drawer. I can go back to that, because I didn't leave it because I didn't enjoy it. I left it to do something else. And I could always go back, or I could always do something different. And I said, when I stop enjoying this, then I'll do something else. That was the promise. And the truth is that I've enjoyed it all. You know, it's been tremendous. I really enjoyed the shape of this career, and therefore it keeps getting me out of bed in the morning, and I'll keep on doing it. And but to anybody who has, you know, has got questions about whether they're enjoying it and whether the thing that should make them, which should set them alight of a day, going out to make great music, if they're not enjoying it, then I think it's time to think really seriously about it.
Okay. Right.
I'm not looking at you. No.
I definitely enjoy it. I wouldn't be doing
Good,
this.
absolutely.
I wouldn't be interviewing very, very famous singers if I didn't enjoy the industry. Thank you for putting me on the spot there. Going back to your kind of training days, your study days. So David Pollard was obviously a very big and positive influence on you. Can you think of others that you've gone back to time and time again over the years, who you know that you can still learn from, even though you've had that kind of student-teacher relationship with for so long? Or is he the one that stands out the most?
Well, David stands out for me because you know, we've been working together for decades, and because when he first heard my singing, he heard a young bleating choral scholar, and he said, I think there's more in there, and if you stick with me for a number of years, you know, he said, this is not an easy fix. This is a slow, organic transition, growing. He said, if you stick with me, in 5 years' time you might be able to do this. In 10 years' time you might be able to do this. And I stuck with him and hopefully proved him right. So that's sheer longevity. Now, I momentarily blanked because there are so many people throughout my life that with whom I come into contact. That's English, isn't it? with whom I have come into contact, who have shaped my career, guided me in certain directions, helped me to realise that there are things that I could do that I hadn't realised possible. You know, I haven't got an exhaustive list, but across my vision comes Ralph Allwood, for example, who had, at the time I first met him, he was running his choral courses at Uppingham School before he moved to Eton. And I think it was my dad who found a brochure for this lying around somewhere and just said, Roddy, what about this?
Yeah, so you were a student on it?
Yes, yeah, 1982 or 3. I did it twice, so maybe 82 and 3 or 3 and 4, whichever it is. I did that. So I was in the first year of sixth form when I first did it, and I was quite young for that year. And I went back a second year with a bit more experience and met more people. And a lot of those people from those choral courses I have met throughout the profession, because that was part of it.
I did them 12 years after.
No, really? Yeah,
15
yes.
years after. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that.
No, that's okay. I'm an old man.
And same. I mean, on the courses I went, Johnny Sells, Andy Staples.
Yes, yeah.
Tim Mead.
Yes.
And I could list at least 20 people who have done well significantly better than me. You know, very, very well singing, very well-known singers. So they're clearly a good thing.
But you just listed also soloists as opposed to people who are singing chorally now.
That's very true. That wasn't intentional. God, if
Yeah.
I go into the people who are professional choral singers, say Monteverdi Choir, 16, Gabriele Consort, all those, it's endless. Just endless.
Yeah.
So I think they have been such a positive force for the UK music industry.
Yes. Yes.
And I mean, Ralph, he does have an OBE or an MBE, doesn't he?
Well,
I mean, he must have.
Sir Ralph, as far as I'm
Is he?
concerned.
Oh.
No, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. But I mean, what an amazing thing to have started. And in some form or other, it's still going on, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. The courses, but the year, maybe the second year that I did it, the course is so big they had to kind of spill over into a second week.
Wow.
And now the whole thing is, it's many weeks and dotted around the country rather than being based in one place, Uppingham, then Eton, and what have you. I had no idea before going to that course that this thing called a choral scholarship existed. It hadn't really entered my world. I was quite naive and quite blinkered, so whatever. And in fact, one of the places we visited on our course, one of the 2 years I went to, was Magdalen College, Oxford, and we had an evensong with John Harper, and that is where I ended up. So I wrote to him and went to see him and sang to him, and the idea was put in my mind because Ralph's course said, there is this thing you can do. It's called a choral scholarship. Why not try? And so Ralph is one of the people who helped turn a corner for me, and there are so many other people. Conductors and teachers, my instrumental teachers even at school, who sometimes taught me things that were not about music, that were not related to the instrument that was in front of me. But they suggested things to me, and I went along a different path. And I might not even have thought of leaving teaching at Tiffin's if I hadn't seen some of my colleagues, my friends from, say, for example, Ifagilini, Robert Hollingworth Ifagilini. I was a founder member of that. And when we all left university and went teaching, they went on to have to start professional careers. And I saw them do that and thought, oh, that's a thing, is it? Well, you can do that, can you? All right. And Ifagilini went off, and I eventually, as soon as I left teaching, I joined Ifagilini again as their principal baritone left. I swapped in for him, and away I went. And others like Paul Agnew, the lead singer in my a cappella boy band. That's a different.
I don't have that on the list, but we're going to have to visit that.
So he went off to join Consort of Music, Gothic Voices, and things like that. John Mark Ainsley similarly.
Oh wow!
Seeing meeting John Mark Ainsley in my, I wasn't even a choral scholar at that point. I'd just come up to see the university, and there was this bright man with wonderful floppy hair, and this I mean, what a voice!
Yes.
And I saw him, and they said, "This is John Mark Ainsley. He's going to be a star." He was a star already, and I thought, "Oh, right, that's what a professional singer looks like." I just didn't know.
Okay.
And from their example, I thought, "Oh, can I do
I want that hair.
Yeah, I want that hair. Yeah.
But I think sadly, like most of us, he doesn't have that hair anymore.
Doesn't seem to affect his singing. So.
No, he still sounds amazing. So if the idea of singing in any form came later on in your teens, were you already very focused on music in another way when you were at school? Because you're also a composer.
Yeah, yes. I always have a bit of trouble saying yes to that question because I feel I'm a singer who composes, and I feel myself different to people who compose as their profession. So I don't know why that's a distinction, but anyway, tra-la-la, I'll come back to that.
You're fairly well known as a composer.
Well,
so
that's just wonderful.
I do both.
Yes. Okay, here we go. I feel myself to be a musician. I'm very happy to put that on census forms when people ask my profession. A musician, and it covers a myriad things. So, what was the question?
You say a myriad of sins.
Oh, yeah. Well, I love that.
Okay. That's what I heard. A myriad of things you must have said.
Is there anything you want to own up to, Mr. Williams, on this census form? Yeah. I'm a musician, I say. Yeah. But what were you asking me? Just
I can't remember. Oh, it did. So you're also a composer. Before you got to singing in your late teens and kind of developed that passion for it, were you already playing instruments? And because you said earlier you were quite blinkered, I'm just wondering what's on if it wasn't already singing at that point.
Well, I was taking part in all the things in the music department. I was, singing in the school choirs and playing in school orchestra, and again, if my memory is trustworthy, the way I picture it is that school careers advice was much more focused towards going through Oxbridge, as though none of the universities existed, going through Oxbridge and then coming out the other side as one of 5 professions, accountant, lawyer. And I don't remember someone saying professional musician or the arts at all.
Really?
I don't remember that. That's not to say they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I have no memory of it because that's to say it was kind of a bit. And I always assumed I was going to be a teacher. I don't know who dropped that idea into my mind, but it kind of was the thing I could do. And then in terms of what subjects to teach, well, it would be music, because that's the thing I was most able to do without working too hard. Very important. And so that was my program, and that's what I started doing until I began to notice that there was this other thing that you could do. And I am not sure whether a careers advisor in the 1970s into the early 80s, I'm not sure whether they would have felt comfortable saying, "Have you thought about taking the lyric stage?" Because that's not how they get paid, is it?
Maybe not those exact words.
Maybe not those exact words.
If somebody had said that to me at school, I would have been, "What's that? I want to be a singer."
So I assume that's how it's done, like joining the Masons, isn't it? I know, maybe not.
Did you read music at Oxford then?
Yes, I did.
For some reason, I was under the impression you read English. I think I just made that up in my head. My computer is dying on me. I was trying to get it back. I think I just had that in my head because when I've had coachings with you, you're so good at going into the text and not just telling people what it means. That doesn't seem to be your approach. You give lots of different versions of what it might mean and then how you want to perform it based on what you feel about it. So I thought, I just assumed, he's very good at text and English. Maybe he studied English at uni. That's a pretty random leap.
No, I can see where you're going with that. And actually, I worked with Andrew Pianist, who's a West. Sorry, I worked with Andrew West, pianist. Andrew West, who did study
very well.
Exactly, I could have gone all over the shop. Andrew is a wonderful collaborative pianist with whom I worked on many occasions. He did study English at university, and it's always great fun working with him because he does. All these years later, he has access to ways of thinking that can stimulate me.
Okay.
But in a sense, when you see me working at text like that, I am essentially winging it.
Okay.
And And I think that's quite important, because I remember working with some young singer at some point who said, you know, I see what you're doing with the words here. I don't feel comfortable about going into poetry in that way because I don't have any training. You know, do I have to be good at poetry in order to be a singer? And my response was kind of on the lines of, it's a bit like appreciating modern art. You just kind of have to react to it as you would as a human being. If something speaks to you, then that's fantastic, because then it means you can come up with an honest response, and that can become part of your performance. If there's a piece of poetry you don't understand, maybe it's opaque. Maybe it's one of those things that I'm learning an Auden song at the minute, and he kind of resists interpretation. You know, sometimes the poet gets in the way. Just look at this. Don't look at that. Look at this. You know, and maybe not having a degree in English means that I can approach it in the same way as maybe the bulk of my audience. Just going to have to receive it in one go, okay, and get out of it as much as we can. You know, so I quite like looking at text. I mean, I spend a lot of time with it, which is the difference. The audience don't get so much time to spend. I in order to memorize it, have to absorb it in some way. But I don't claim to have the PhD in it by any means. So I love to be able to take things at face value.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a really nice approach. It's quite refreshing to hear somebody say that, because quite often we're told this means this. And I guess when you're a young singer at college, you trust your teachers, and if somebody has more expertise and experience, then you say, oh, it does. But it's nice to know that as we get older and we're doing the work ourselves, partly with coaches and teachers, but actually mostly when we're on the road, we have to put in those hours ourselves. Yeah. And we can call people and we can ask. Yeah. But actually you also have to trust yourself to get to the bottom of the text. Yes. So it's nice to hear somebody very established say, it could mean any 5 things, I don't know, but I have to pick one and present it to the audience. Yes. It might be wrong, but I've made a decision and I go with it. Absolutely. That's great, because it gives you a chance to change your mind. Yes. In the future. And it's fine to be wrong. Yes. You know, yes. Hopefully you'll get another go. Yes. In that place. Yes, exactly. So, quite right too, yeah. Another thing you said to me in the first coaching I had with you, you said, I don't do technique in coachings because I don't believe I can make a difference in this short amount of time. Could you explain what you mean by that? Because that's something I feel is important. But you articulated it so well then. You probably won't remember exactly what you said, because this was a while ago now. But if you still hold that belief, could you explain why it is you take that approach? Yeah, it's because, you know, I've only got my own lived experience. I love that phrase, as opposed to my dead experience. I've only got my own lived experience to work on. Okay, so and my experience has been working with David Pollard over 2 to 3 decades. So it's taken me that long to get my voice from where it was, and of course I've grown, but where it was back then to where it is now, that I'm, you know, in my late 50s. And David, as I said earlier on, he knows my voice kind of better than anyone, and possibly including me, because he's on the outside listening to what I'm trapped in here with all the, you know. So my teacher said once in a video interview that I saw her do, it would be great if we could have our ears out on stalks. Yes. But we don't, so occasionally we have to trust other people. Trust someone, yes, yes. Similarly, when I'm on stage or, you know, whatever, I'm singing above an orchestra, I can't ever hear what that's like. Not even a recording doesn't go close. So in the knowledge that it can take a long time to work with someone, persevere, and really work out how to explain something, a mechanism that we cannot see, that is essentially a set of feelings for you, and a set of feelings for me. I could try and describe them in words, but I can't demonstrate. In order to try and make a difference to that, I'm going to have to use all sorts of different words and phrases to try and make a difference with you or another person. Now, I know how I sing, but I don't know how anybody else does, essentially. If I wanted to make a science of finding out or to help people, then there's a whole area of work that I could
research and explore. If I said, right, do you know what, Jules, I'm gonna set up as a teacher now, not as and I part you here, not as a retiring singer who's looking to just I don't, you know, that's a lovely thing. Shoot me when I turn up tomorrow and say, have you got any teaching title?
I'm just going to delete that question off my screen.
But so I kept here because we've all got to live. But what I mean to say is, the day that here's why I'm comfortable. The day I decide to teach singing rather than coach, I realised I got to put the work in to discover how to teach someone else to be a better singer within themselves, not how to teach someone else to sing the way I sing, which suits my body as a 58-year-old man. That's how I sing. To try and teach a 23-year-old woman or 23-year-old man how to do what I do now, kind of weird. So that's the main reason. Add into that the observation from 20, 30 years ago, like say when I was at Guildhall, but also afterwards. You sometimes might get a starry singer to come into the conservatoire to work with people for a bit, and some young unsuspecting singer gets up, sings perfectly nicely, maybe without much awareness or certainly without much experience, but they sing perfectly nicely, and then the visiting person starts doing things with their technique, using different language than they're used to with their own teacher. And all sorts of things, and of course it's public, so the young singer has to try and mimic all the stuff. I've seen people screwed up in 20 minutes on stage and leaving the stage basically unable to produce a sound.
And it can take, that 20 minutes can take a long time to unwind.
Yeah.
Sometimes years.
Yeah.
And a lot of confusion.
And a lot of confusion, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think you saying that to me in that first session made me feel really comfortable because it made me feel like I can try whatever I want with this piece. I think we were doing Elijah.
Oh yeah, we did look at Elijah, didn't we? That's right.
And I just remember thinking, he's not going to be critiquing this. He's just going to be helping me with the interpretation and inhabiting the role. Yeah. And it just meant that actually I didn't have to worry about that.
Great.
Which also, again, it's fine to be wrong, and that is that kind of scenario with a more experienced singer who's done the role more than you. You need to be able to feel like I can make vocal mistakes. Yeah. Because if I can't make them here, where can I make them?
Yes. So in practice rooms, that's exactly right. Being able to try things out. Those moments of my wife, as a gag, has sometimes opened the door of my practice room and says, "Are you going to sing it like that on the day?" And I said, "Because I'm trying something." But you need to have that space to do that. And absolutely, I agree. Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's what the whole point of music college should be. But I feel like once you leave music college, there's that. The feeling is that goes, and everything you sing in front of everybody has to be absolutely perfect. And I'd quite like people to just have this attitude of like continuous progress. That is what you're aiming at. Because you're never perfect.
Yes.
And actually, when you're in rehearsals with colleagues, it doesn't matter if you yodel a note. It doesn't matter if you have to go down the octave for half a day because you've got 5 weeks. And you're singing a massive opera, and you can't really sing it full out every day. I mean, some people can extraordinarily, but not many people. I think
it's an interesting observation, and knowing that we're different, knowing that a colleague doesn't mark. This colleague doesn't mark. They never have, never will. So they just say, "I feel like that." That's great.
And don't be intimidated.
Yes, exactly.
Because actually, on the night, you're all going to be singing normally.
Yes. Yes. If things go well. Yes. So it's not. It's entirely right to be able to work out your own pacing and work out what you need. I think is quite nice. Yeah.
I heard a good saying the other day that the most important thing is how you feel about yourself when you're alone. And I thought maybe for an opera singer, or for any kind of, not just opera singer, for a professional singer or musician, the most important thing is how you feel about yourself when you're working with other people. Because it's very easy to be intimidated. Because there are so many good people in this
Yes,
profession.
yes,
And I know many people, they hear someone else and automatically think they sound better than me.
yes.
And
yes.
maybe that's better than going, I sound better than them. But still, the first version of that,
Yeah.
if you're in that mindset constantly, and you see yourself getting smaller
Yes.
compared to everybody else. Whereas if you can just think, it doesn't matter, we all sound great, otherwise we wouldn't be
We
here.
wouldn't be here, absolutely. And also we're bringing completely different things to the table. And I'll tell you who knows that, and that is the conductor knows that. But the director, if you're talking about opera, the director in particular knows that. Because they see such different skills. They see a wonderful singer who's maybe a little bit limited as actor, but it doesn't matter because they make such a terrific noise. They see another person whose voice maybe is not so developed, younger, older, whatever, but can't take your eyes off them. So it's good in those situations to know that we bring different things to the party. So
yeah. What was it? One of my older teachers said to me, they were watching somebody really famous on stage. Oh, it was a really famous Italian baritone. Who he had a great voice, but it wasn't as great as some of the other great baritones. I mean, he did.
It sounds like you're talking about Tito Gorby, but
yes,
yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah.
And she said it was bizarre because he could be standing on stage doing nothing, and you would just find yourself watching him.
Yeah.
You'd be like, he's just standing over there. These guys,
Yes.
and then.
What's he doing?
Yes. And I mean, he could obviously sing.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
But you compare him vocally to Leonard Warren, Robert Merrill, and all those people. His voice is not considered to be as glorious as theirs. But my word, I don't think anybody in his era had a better career than him. Just because he was magnetic. So I mean, that's testament to the fact that if you can just bring what you have.
Yes.
Then it could go quite well.
And knowing also that, realising therefore that opera is a sum of many, many parts.
Yes.
It's not a concert.
No, it's very much teamwork. I did a course in Italy in 2010, and the guy who was a singing teacher on the course, but also conducted the ensembles, he got quite angry with the singers at one point. I think a lot of them didn't want to be there for the ensemble things. They just wanted to sing their arias.
Yes.
And they can be more fun, especially when you're younger and you want to work on your voice. But he pointed out, even if you're the main role in an opera, you get 1-2 arias.
Yes.
And then it's ensembles.
Yes.
And recits. So this is really important.
Yeah.
You have to be able to work with other people. And even a small character that doesn't get an aria. Having sung bass for 15, 16 years, a lot of the operas I was in, I didn't have an aria, but I was very important, I tell myself, in the ensembles. And actually, if I did it well, I got very good reviews. And I always found that amazing because I thought, I didn't have an aria. But actually, these reviews have been more positive about me and some of the other smaller roles than they have about some of the bigger roles, because they know, they've heard those arias so many times. If you can shine in the small, there weren't ensemble parts, but I guess they were small roles. I guess you can call them ensemble parts as well. But it's worth doing absolutely brilliantly and putting the time in, because they're not, I don't think they're least important.
You're
a team. I'm rabbiting on.
No, it's good. I like it. That's very very sensible.
You mentioned a few minutes ago how obviously your voice has changed as you got older, and as it does with everyone. What roles do you see yourself doing going forward as that process takes place? And has it changed your song repertoire at all?
That's a good question. I'll do song repertoire first of all, and not particularly. The thing that has changed most of the time I'm aware of is realising that I've got a finite amount of time as a singer, as a professional singer, left. And that's something of which I was not at all aware 10 years or 20 years ago. I just thought it was infinite, and all this music, I just collect another volume of songs and go at it and program away. And now I'm much more aware that there is an end game, and that if there are things that I want to do, that I need to program them sooner rather than later. I'm not sure what those things are, but I just know that it's finite. So that's one thing. And in terms of operatic roles, that's far more difficult because I don't know what I want to sing operatically for the next 10, 15 years or whatever. I have, for example, sung last year, I was singing J'aime mon père and La Traviata, something we were talking about when I did the symposium with you, about how to learn a role. It was a very well-timed symposium because I was literally just learning a role. And also changing slightly into singing something by Verdi that I wouldn't have sung otherwise. And I don't know if this is the beginning of a new chapter. It doesn't necessarily feel that way. But I do know that I enjoyed singing it. I do know that I had to work hard at it. It was a real singing lesson from Verdi, and I took my time with David Pollard. I went to see him several occasions a year ago now as I was preparing it, and I can tell you that when I started work with him, it was an effort to sing that. And then by the time I finished working on it, not finished, that's a silly thing to say. By the time that we ran out of time and it was time to present it, that I was enjoying singing it a great deal.
Okay.
A bit like many things that require some sort of physical exertion, having left it for a bit and then come back to the aria again, I suddenly found that it was effortful again. So I realised I need to keep it up.
I think with singing, and not just singing in general, but very particular sorts of repertoire, as we're talking about, you either use it or you lose it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I find it's because I go between solo stuff and then I have a Sunday job here singing in the choir. I mean, there are some extraordinary voices in the choir here, like some really good soloists, but they've grown up doing lots of music and they can sight read brilliantly, so they do this as well.
Yes.
But I mean, one of our sopranos is quite often doing Verdi and Wagner places, and she
Yeah.
scales it back for here. In fact, that's not just one of them, that's all three of them. We have astonishingly good sopranos and singers in general. But when we've been talking, we found that if you're doing lots of the operatic repertoire, then coming back to this can be quite hard.
Yes.
And if there's a period where you're doing lots of this, then going back to that can be hard.
Yes.
So you kind of have to, if you want to be doing something, you just have to be doing it.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think that it's probably the case with people like Hans Hotter, Bryn Terfel, the really, really big voices. I imagine if they were to stop for 6 months, even they would, going back into a ring cycle, I don't think it would just be like that.
Yeah.
Those muscles, they have to be in use.
Well, it is a muscle. So yeah, you're quite right. And seeing my wife, who has run marathons, she's run 3 marathons. I've never run a marathon. Seeing her training regime for that, it's quite interesting because it's plotted to run 26 miles on a given day.
Mm-hmm.
There's hundreds, 500 miles of running to be done in the 4 or 5 months beforehand, in a plan that's carefully structured. So it's just seeing what's involved to do that makes me realise that if I were to plot a particular challenge role for myself, that I would do well to write myself a marathon plan and just know where I need to be by what point. There is enough oratorio repertoire, for example, that feels like an old friend, that I don't feel the need to practice it particularly or sing it much, and I can reach off the shelf and sing it. That's from a musical point of view. From a vocal point of view, and maybe just again the end of my 50s, come to a realization that it really does help to sing it a bit beforehand, to Saturday morning. Creation, isn't it? And because I know how it goes. It's an old friend, German, English, it's all fine, But just towards the end of an evening, my voice went thinking, that's not quite what it is.
I've never heard you quite make that noise.
Not quite that noise. Not quite that noise.
Turning into Kermit the
A
Frog.
little bit of Kermit just to be had there. But I do, I am aware at the end of certain evenings, I thought, right, I could have done that better. And I hope no one noticed, because I hope I don't want to get in their way of their enjoyment of the evening.
Mm-hmm.
But I will go home and have a little stern talk with myself and say, that could have been better, and you could have done it with the following things. And it nearly always, I think, in my mind, comes down to what I have been, how tired I've been, how much singing I've been doing, and whether I've given enough time to sing a piece through. Of all the possible scenarios as for why I did not give my 10 out of 10 performance, that is the most likely culprit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oratorio is a hard one though, because some of those pieces are very long, and you have long gaps. Opera, I've always found much easier. It's something about acting on stage and being more physically involved. The voice seems to come alive when you inhabit a character, when you're not yourself. I don't know what it is, and I don't know if other people find this as well, but oratorio, you can be sitting there for ages and stand up and sing something really difficult. I mean, just as an example, Beethoven 9.
Yes.
Sometimes you're sitting there for a very long time.
Yes.
And then you have to come in and sing something really quite difficult.
Yes.
And I mean, you study for years to be able to do that. But that's one that's always made me nervous.
Yeah.
But also Matthew Passion, you have some massive gaps.
Yes.
And you don't go off stage, you just sit there. So
let's just talk about that, because there are two separate things going on, and one of them I've alluded to already. That if you've got a role in an opera that's here and there, a little bit in this act, a little bit in that act, the rest of the time is in your dressing room. For a start, you get to leave the stage, but also you would have rehearsed it for how many weeks, so it's just in your body.
Yes.
And you turn up on a night for a performance, and it's just right there. So we don't do Beethoven 9 in the same way. You just don't rehearse it in the same way.
No.
I mean, it would be quite fun to try, but you need to be unemployed for about 3 weeks before your Beethoven 9. So that's just a little shape that works.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is simply leaving the stage. I think that's huge. The focus required to sit on stage and be engaged in a show is not to be underestimated. No. And sometimes, I haven't done this for a bit actually, but sometimes you're right at the front of the stage. There's a front row of the audience, and they're watching, right there, looking up at you,
head there,
chewing their gum,
bright lights there,
yes. And you're right in front of them, and obviously you know that if you drop asleep, it's visible to everybody. If you wince during your colleague's aria, it's visible to everyone. All sorts of stuff.
This is turning into a very frank conversation.
Well, it's very frank, because it's absolutely part of it. Even just zoning out, going to what I call a brown study, just getting lost. I mean, like far away, look in your eyes. And, people, there's someone watching you the entire time. So for me, the only way to be during an evening like that, like yesterday's Matthew Passion, for example, was doing Matthew Passion yesterday at the festival hall with the Bach choir. And I'm right there, up there on stage, kind of on this plinth, and the only way to be is to be engaged from the first note to the last. And it's 4 arias, some recitatives you have to remember to pop up and sing, but it's intermittent. And the focus, you have to remain active throughout while also not doing much.
There are no rest moments. No. Which is much harder than coming on stage for half an hour, being incredibly active, and then going back to your dressing room, having a
toweling down, cup of tea, listen on the tannoy, Sudoku,
Yes, although you can get a bit too relaxed and then think, oh, that's the intro to my aria.
Yes.
I did have a colleague at WNO. Actually, no, we were colleagues in another company. But we had both been at WNO, and she told me this great story. She heard the introduction to her aria and she thought, I'm not even in the right costume. So she grabbed the costume, kind of getting changed down the corridor, and she made it onto the stage as her aria finished. And she dies at the end, so she went on and then just lied down. And the conductor was clearly his face. He was not happy.
Oh my goodness.
Now, I don't know whether this is exaggerated, but if she did, it was worth it, because I laughed.
It's great.
And I won't mention her name.
No, indeed, that's lovely. That's lovely. You know who you are.
Yes.
But the great thing is I love it because the show must go on. I love the idea that the orchestra's played it through.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And actually, some of the audience, if they didn't know the piece, they might not have noticed. It just would have been like a beautiful orchestral
Massenet interlude. Yeah.
with somebody coming on and falling over at the end. Brilliant. Luckily, I've never done. No, I have missed an entry once because I was just having a really good conversation with somebody, and I was very sternly told off, and it never happened again.
It makes my palms clammy just thinking about it. And I shared with a BBC producer just the other day a moment at the Barbican during a live opera broadcast when one of my colleagues just had to give me some French coaching. The opera was in French. He just happened to give me some French coaching backstage. He said, "It's very good what you do, but you just do." And I noticed that it got a bit quiet on stage. I had to run in. I had to deliver a spoken line, but there was just a small pause while a knight of the realm was battling there, waiting for something to happen. Anyway, but fortunately, the panic with which my character speaks his line was
perfect.
Perfect. Yeah.
So, did anybody notice, or were you?
Well, the BBC she did say that when it came to I think it was broadcast live, but for later packaging, they did just cut a little bit of dead sound out.
Okay. So there was nothing visual.
Nothing visual, yes, because it's just a stage, at a concert.
There's that. Oh, where did he come from? Just appears in the middle of the stage. Maybe I'll edit this video and we just disappear.
Yeah, no, it was audio only, so you didn't see me scamper. And yes,
brilliant.
Yes,
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a very amusing chat. Thank you very much.
It's my absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And I ought to say, although you are not a patron of my company, I did ask you, but you are a patron of so many charities and companies that unfortunately you couldn't give me that time. But Roddy, he has done an awful lot for my company, and therefore for all the people that have been involved and are involved in the things going forward. So thank you very much. It's much appreciated. And thank you for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time.